All right. All right. Welcome back, Ranger fans and Senator fans. This is John Chick with Locked On New York Rangers, joined here by Ross Levitan of Locked On Ottawa Senators. And obviously, the Rangers just got a fairly convincing 5-1 win in Madison Square Garden. And we're going to break that all down in just a second. But first, just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And with that, Ross, I'll kind of toss it to you here, just your general thoughts on what was obviously a much more one-sided affair than the last time these two teams played each other.
Yeah, certainly. A fun fact. The Senators are 0-6-0 against the New York Islanders and New York Rangers. So I don't know what's in the water there in New York, but something's gone wrong. Those are the only two teams that they're 0-3-0 against this year. But it was just a complete stinker. You know what I compared it to? Remember that 2017 playoff series? Obviously super entertaining if you're a Sens fan, for the Pajot 4-goal game, all that. You win the series at MSG. But games 3 and 4 were both 4-1 Ranger wins where the Senators really didn't get anything going. And this one kind of reminded me of that. Ottawa scored first, and then the wheels just fell off. Without Anton Forsberg, that might have been 8 or 9-1. It was, it was a tough one.
I definitely agree with you. Forsberg was great in this game, despite, giving up, 5 goals in the end. But, that playoff series that you just mentioned there, not to rehash any bad memories for Ranger fans, but I remember those games you were talking about, games 3 and 4, and the Rangers basically just cruised. The Senators at the end of game 4 seemed to be kind of flustered. There were some extracurriculars. There is nothing anyone could have told me at that point that I would have believed that the Rangers weren't going to go on to win that series. But, props to your team. They obviously regrouped. And
game 5 was crazy. Game 5 was back and forth. I think there was like 4 or 5 lead changes in that one. It went to overtime as well. But that was just a wild series back and forth. I think the Rangers were up 3-1 in game 5, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right. And I think in game 5, the Rangers scored in overtime, but they immediately
did high stick
because there was a high stick.
100%.
I don't remember what I was doing, but I was driving somewhere and I had that game on the radio. I actually could not watch that one live, just some other commitment. And I remember, I just went, I was so excited. And then immediately it's getting waved off. And I'm just like, oh my God, there we go,
You might remember it as the Chris Neal, Tanner Glass game as well, where the Sens put Nealer in. He just went straight for Tanner Glass and right to the penalty box. I think he played 10 seconds that whole game.
he was a hard-nosed player for sure. But, getting back to this game here tonight and just the Senators in general, I wanted to ask you, man, obviously, Senators not going to be going to the postseason this season, but the regular season's winding down a little bit here. And I'm just wondering, man, obviously this was not them putting their best foot forward tonight. But what do you want to see from this team, the last handful of games here? What will kind of make you feel good as a Senators fan going into next season? Is there anything that they can do, these last few games here that you'll be feeling like this could be a playoff team next year?
Yeah, for sure. I think right now you're just looking at all the youth, and this would not have made a difference tonight, but of course you want to see the injured guys get back in the lineup. Drake Batherson's just out with an illness right now. He's a super fun player. He's the only Senators over a point per game. And he missed some time this year because of a greasy hit from Aaron Dell, a goalie of all people, shouldered him, high ankle sprain, misses 20 games, misses his first All-Star opportunity. And then Tim Stützle took a greasy knee-on-knee against Montreal where they call him a diver on it. And Rangers fans are probably listening to this, like, yeah, he is a diver. He did get called for embellishment against the Rangers earlier this year. I think he drew 3 penalties in that game. And so there are times certainly where he'll sell a call. But if you saw the replay on this, it said knee on knee. That's one of the most dangerous plays in hockey. Gallagher tells him that he lays on the ice too often, and he did stay on the power play. So I could see why the opponent would be upset about that. But if you know anything about a knee, as long as it's not torn or that, the swelling comes in after the game, and he's now missed 2 straight games. So after being told that he embellished something, he's now out of the lineup for a couple of games. Sucks for the league, sucks for Ottawa, because he has 16 points his last 16 games. He's really been coming on strong as a 20-year-old. So that, to my point, is more that you want to see those kids. Josh Norris has been an incredible story this year as well. So just these individual stories, like Brady Tkachuk's at 53 points right now. Can he hit 60? It's just these personal milestones that would make you feel good going into next season. And then the gem of the Sens prospect pool. And when you're in year 5 of a rebuild, I guess 4, because the first one, you don't call it a rebuild then. You just call it the wheels falling off.
Yep.
Jake Sanderson signed with the team, but the Sens luck this year, he's hurt. So he dove across his crease in the last game with North Dakota to try to stop a goal in the final minute, and somebody stepped on his hand. So he had to get a big surgery done to get a cut. So he's still skating with Ottawa right now, but if he could get into a game or two at the end of the season, that's something you're looking forward to. Tomorrow night, the Sens kind of goalie of the future, per se, is getting his second start. He beat Detroit in his first one. We call him the Great Dane, Mad Sogar, big Danish goalie. He's like 6'8", so covers a ton of net. So just these little breadcrumbs of the future is all we have to really root for right now. And I'm going back home. Obviously, I'm born and raised in Ottawa, but I've been living out of town for the last few years. I'm going back for the last 3 home games. So those are must-win games, John. I don't care about the draft lottery. Those are must-win games.
I'm with you, man. I mean, look, the draft lottery can shake out any which way, right? But to me, it's more important to kind of, establish a winning culture at the end of the season and, have these guys feeling good when the year ends. And hopefully you can build on that at the start of next season. And I kind of relate to what you're going through right now, Ross, because toward the end of last season, the Rangers, they had everything that happened with Tom Wilson. I think that was like the 4th or 5th to last game of the season. And then the game after that was also against the Capitals. And that was just fight night at Madison Square Garden. But lost in all of this was the fact that they lost 5 games in a row and they only had 1 game left against the Bruins. And I'm sitting down to watch it. And, obviously they can't make the playoffs, but I kind of surprised myself, like how badly I wanted the Rangers to win that game because it was in Boston. I don't like the Bruins. I don't think anybody who's not a Bruins fan would like pull for that team in a playoff series. You know what I mean? So I was really into it. It was probably going to be David Quinn's last game as the coach. And of course it was, but man, I was jacked up when they got that win there. And it's important, it's important, especially for a young team like the Senators to finish strong here. And again, just kind of establish that winning culture going into next season.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And you hope that they can mix in a few of these prospects up in the last few games. And that's really all they have to play for. A couple rivalry games, like they still have another game against Montreal. That's going to be chippy after what I just told you happened in the last meeting there. And those games always get off the rails. The Leafs are in town, throw the standings out of the window when they're coming to town. Even though, man, like this pace that Matthews is on right now, like it disgusts me how good he is at hockey. But it's those rivalry games right now that Sens fans have to go to. And then you're just hoping, like, funny enough, the Sens were maybe the worst expansion team of all time. I'll tell your listeners a quick little story.
Sure, yeah.
1992 was their expansion draft. So think of technology at the time, certainly not anywhere near where it is today. They forgot a laptop charger for their sheet, and they actually tried to draft 3 players who retired out of the game of hockey. So their expansion draft was just a complete gong show. They went to Florida without their laptop charger, and that screwed them out of that. So they let's just put it that way, a little unorganized to start things off. But they were still able to build into a playoff team 4 seasons later. So they're officially eliminated. So now this is the 5th straight season without playoffs, longer than it took them from an expansion team to get to the playoffs. So next year, and the problem with Ottawa, and they back-to-back years now, their first 20 games, 4 wins. You're out of the playoffs right before the season even gets going. If they have a slow start out the gate next year, and of course, ownership's all in flux right now with the sudden passing, shouldn't say sudden, but the passing of Eugene Melnyk. So I don't know what the plan is upstairs. A lot of people are interested in buying it, but Pierre Dorion right now is the 9th longest tenured GM in the National Hockey League. And yeah, he had a great run the first year where the pieces were all kind of in place for him and he goes to conference final. But since then, man, it's 5 straight years. And then he shoots himself in the foot. People love to point out his quotes. The "we're a team" was a good one when he was asked what he was excited about for an upcoming season. Well, yeah, I think there's 31 other teams in the league. What makes yours special?
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. They are a team.
Wrong. And then this one, I kind of understand what he meant. And again, French is his first language. English is second language. So there's maybe a little that gets lost in there. But he said the rebuild is over. And I know what he meant. There's no more pieces to ship out. Like what you've accumulated in draft capital and prospects, that's the rebuild.
Right.
But people took that as saying we're a playoff team now. Well, that hasn't been the case. So he's ridiculed for that, and I guess somewhat rightfully so. But we'll see. I think if they have a slow start next year, heads have to roll, because if they don't make the playoffs for 6 straight years, now you're not rebuilding. Now you're just the Buffalo Sabres.
There's a lot of turnover in this league to the point where, going more than like 3 or 4 years in a row without making the playoffs. I mean, I think there has to be some accountability for that. And I'm sure he'd be on the hot seat for that. They actually, there was something they did at the trade deadline that I wanted to ask you about, and just wanted to talk general trade deadline stuff with you in just a second here.
You know that the
Um,
Rangers, I might be waving my pom-poms on your show here coming up because I've got a few futures at BetOnline for the Rangers here coming up in the postseason. I got them at 2,200 to 1 to win the cup this year. So I got my
wow.
pom-poms waving here for the Rangers, and I love their deadline too.
Dude, that is nuts. Yeah, they were definitely one of the winners of the deadline, and we'll get to that in just a second. But first, just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Built Bar. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, Puffs included, 100% real chocolate. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every single time. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And we just want to thank you guys for making Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Senators your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And Ross, we'll get back to the hockey stuff in just a second. Do you have a favorite Built Bar flavor? I like to kind of gauge, the other Locked On hosts, what their favorites are.
Yeah, so I always recommend when we do those ad reads, the 12 bar mix box because you got to try each one individually. But I'm a sucker. I grew up working as a cook in a Mexican style restaurant. So give me the churro. And I do it without the caramel dip because I'm trying to, listen to Built Bar when they say they want to make them healthy. But man, are you ever tempted to just get out the caramel to dip these churros in because they're so tasty, man. Absolutely love them.
Absolutely delicious. And the caramel apple, the limited time flavor they got right now, not too shabby. Not too shabby.
Right.
I would definitely recommend that to anybody. But yeah, man, we talked about, obviously where the Senators are and if they're still rebuilding or where the rebuild stands, however you want to kind of phrase it. But they made a move around the deadline that I thought was a little odd. They brought in Travis Hamonic for a third rounder, which, he's a good player, but I looked at his contract status. I think he's a free agent the year after this one coming up.
Correct.
So any logic there? Just can you kind of explain what you think they might have been going for with that move there?
Yeah, I'll quickly hit on. Are we going to get to the other trade after? Because this one was definitely the head scratcher, but I want to talk about my boy Matty Joe after. Holy smokes!
Oh, absolutely,
what a
man.
player!
We got time here. We can hit on everything.
We got the two players with the most points since the trade deadline. They put up a graphic. You probably didn't get to see the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast where the Sens get pushed to the third channel, where they've got Sportsnet gets the major game, the Leafs. Then CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Corp, gets the Habs game. And then they put Ottawa on the third tier level of that. But that aside, which we're used to, we're kind of nuzzled between Montreal and Toronto geographically. They put up most points since the trade deadline by players that were traded. And I thought it was strange. They put Tyler Toffoli on that list. He had about a month and a half head start over these other guys.
Yeah.
But out of the guys who were traded on the deadline day, Mathieu Joseph, Andrew Copp, and future Ottawa Senator Claude Giroux are the three that are up there. But with Travis Hamonic, head scratcher. So, little personal anecdote, had a date day planned, going to the spa. I get that news, and my whole day is just thrown into a blender. I'm sitting at the spa. I'm trying to figure out what the hell are they doing. Sure, it's a third round pick, and it's not even their own third round pick. It's Vancouver. So you're looking at what, a mid-80s pick? It's not anything to lose sleep over. And a quick aside, the Senators made a trade for Zach Sanford last offseason. They ended up trading him for a fifth, but it was Sanford to Ottawa for Logan Brown and a fourth, but the fourth disappears if Logan Brown played 30 NHL games, and he played game 29 tonight. So they're probably getting that fourth rounder back. So they give up a third, whatever. But to target Travis Hamonic was super strange for a team that's in the position that Ottawa is right now. Signing bonus due this offseason, that's not a Senators type pickup. A guy who's making more money than his cap hit. The Senators are a notorious budget team that the Rangers are a perfect example. The Senators gave up a second round pick in the Mika Zibanejad trade. so that New York would pay Brassard's signing bonus before the deal went through. That was what the draft pick was paid for. So for them to go completely opposite of what their plans usually entail, you think you're like, okay, what the hell is the plan here? But after watching Travis Hamonic, he has blown me away as what I expected him to be. I thought he was going to be another Nikita Zaitsev, another like flat-footed defensive defenseman that can't really do much but ice the puck. He's not that. He's moving bodies away from the front of the net. He's doing his job. And the way Pierre Dorion explained it was, you know what? I didn't really love any of the players that are free agents this upcoming season. And if I did, like, let's say Josh Manson, he's getting a 5 or 6 year deal, right? There's not many decent defensemen that you're going to get for a 1-year deal. And Ottawa has these 2 first-round picks in the minors right now, Lassie Thompson and Jacob Bernard-Docker. They're just not quite ready. So I think what he was doing is saying, hey, here's a 1-year buffer for a player that we like, who Jack Capuano, who's an Ascends associate coach, former Islanders head coach, had Hamonic for years there. I think he wore a letter under him. And that was when Hamonic was at his peak. Hamonic got traded for like a first and 2 seconds when he got acquired by Calgary. Like, he used to be a hell of a player. Obviously, those types of players slow down a little bit quicker than the others. They're playing a little more physical. And I spoke to a Vancouver source that was saying they couldn't get rid of Hamonic quick enough, like from a locker room perspective too. But he seems like he's come in here. Didn't realize he's bilingual too, which for Ottawa, it's actually a big deal. It's a bilingual city. Like, all of our stop signs say arrête on it as well. Like, so to have that kind of connection to the Francophone community, of course, it's not the be all end all, but it was certainly a welcome addition and a welcome sign. It seems like he's fitting in well. And funny enough, they've got the vet pair back there. It's him and former Ranger Michael Del Zotto who are playing together. So you know what? DJ Smith has started them in each game. Hamonic's first game was in his hometown in Winnipeg, where I'm living. So I had my ISO cam on him. I had the horse blinders on. I wanted to see what the hell this guy was all about. And you know what? I think that when you explain it that way, where it's like it's a 1-year buffer, sure, you give up a third. They've got like 3/4 and a 5th. So, and you know what? With the third, they're probably going to take a guy ranked in the 5th round with the way they've been drafting recently. And sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't, but they certainly do not listen to the public list. And that's pretty key if you're thinking Tyler Boucher went 10th overall this past year. Even not many people had Jake Sanderson going 5th, and now that's looking great. But they've got their own thing when it comes to drafts. So I think they didn't really care what the pick was. How funny is this, though? I'll throw it back to, I know it's been going on for a while here, but Dorion, this is where he gets himself in trouble. He doesn't have to do this. He said Vancouver wanted a 4th, but they didn't have a 4th, so he just gave him a 3rd. And then the next day, they acquired a 4th in the Nick Paul trade. So it's just like,
yeah, they couldn't quite get their ducks in a row there.
And it's like, well, okay, well, if you wanted a 4th and we only have a 3rd, then give us back a 6th or a 5th. Like, give it, like,
get
balance
something back. Yeah.
Balance. It's funny, man. But he's been fitting in well to wrap all that into a bow. Hamonic has actually been fitting in well, and right shot defensemen always have that little extra value because they're a little rarer than lefties. So you know what? A move that I was very critical of, but so far, and Dorion said it himself, he said, judge me at training camp. So I'm not judging Hamonic yet. I'll judge him after he plays the start of next season when the team can't play as loose as they are now. They're feeling it. They had a 3-game win streak, which for them is wild. So you know what? We'll see at training camp, but the Sens need to add more. Like, this wasn't enough at the deadline. They have to be busy in the offseason too.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think it's a situation where, you could maybe even look to extend him. I mean, he's not that old. I don't want to make it sound like he's ancient. He's like 31 years old, I believe.
Yep.
So, you could always hammer out an extension with him in the offseason, at or near next year's trade deadline. And if you're in a situation where, the Senators aren't looking like a playoff team, then maybe you flip him somewhere else and get something more back for him than the 3rd-round pick. And then it all kind of takes care of itself that way, too. So, they got some options. And, I think you did a nice job making some sense out of that. Because for me, that was definitely a head scratcher, as kind of an outsider looking in.
And Ottawa isn't the free agent destination that New York is, right? So if you have to give up something to now have a piece for next season, then that's kind of what you have to do in these small markets.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And we'll continue, talking everything Rangers and Senators, maybe even get into,
some I need to get into the Rangers deadline, man.
What's that?
I want to get in the Rangers deadline.
Oh, absolutely, man. We're going to do that. I could talk all night about that. But first, let's let everybody know today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Senators is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And actually, Ross, I know we were talking right before we started recording here. You threw a couple of bills down on the Rangers this year, did you not?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think I mentioned during the show too. Shout out BetOnline. That's where I do all my wagering, and I just love this New York team. And you know what? It was a strategic investment as well, because I saw the amount of cap space they had. I saw the prospect pool they had, and they didn't really touch their prospect pool, right? They more went with draft picks as the capital to get Andrew Copp, to get Frankie Vatrano, and make these moves. And I just knew they were going to add something. And once they did, that their odds would decrease. So when you build from the goalie out, and we're a goalie friendly show at Locked On Senators, Igor Shesterkin's that dude. He almost scored a goal on the Sens the last time they played. So you know what? I've got a ton of respect and time for him. And that's the main reason. And they've got an elite power play. They have a superstar, maybe two. Mika's right on the fringe, I think, of being a true superstar. Panarin is all that and more. So I think when you have those pieces and then you can add, like, you tell me, man, like, who do you think is fitting in better? Because I think Andrew Copp, had more skill to begin with, but I think Frankie Vatrano's punching above his weight class even more. Like, both those guys are impressing. Which one's got your attention more?
I mean, they both do. It's such a toss-up, excuse me. I would lean a little bit more toward Andrew Copp, but just to kind of break down, everything that these guys have done since coming over to the Rangers. I mean, with Vatrano, I've been saying this the last couple of episodes. This guy is, I would say, the steal of the trade deadline season. When you consider the fact that the Rangers only had to give up a 4th-round draft pick to bring him in, I mean, that's big time. And like you said, punching a little bit above his weight class right now, to be sure. But he comes in, they initially have him on the third line. He gives them a little bit of depth scoring, and then they move him up to the line with Mika and Kreider. And, I mean, anybody's going to benefit from playing with the two of them. But he's just been on fire. You can't keep this guy off the score sheet. And something really important that he brings to the table for the Rangers, I think, is that this guy has a lethal shot, and he's not afraid to use it. The Rangers, they've gotten a little bit better at this season, but the past couple of seasons, they are selfless to a fault. Nobody wants to be selfish. Everybody wants to set up their buddy for an easy tap-in goal and, hashtag one too many passes, right? That was kind of that was kind of the story for the Rangers, the last couple of seasons. But, I mean, Frank Vatrano, man, if this guy gets a chance, he's going to let it rip. And we saw tonight, he didn't score, but right at the start of the third period there, pulled the trigger about 30 seconds in, rang it right off the post.
Yep.
And, obviously came close to scoring there, picked up an assist later in the game, setting up Chris Kreider for a goal. So Vatrano's been absolutely fantastic. I didn't see him necessarily as being somebody that was going to play on the first line. But now that he is, I say keep rolling with it as long as it keeps working.
And you know what's super interesting in those situations is it wasn't a rebuilding team getting a draft pick, right? Like, he came from Florida, maybe the biggest contender, the betting favorite at BetOnline right now. So it's almost like, why was he a cast off from that team?
I had the exact same reaction. I did this 2-part special where I took a look at the 16 teams that were not in playoff position as we were approaching the trade deadline, and I tried to pick out one trade target from every single one of them, and it was obviously
Who was your senator?
I think it was Tierney.
No,
because I saw he was a UFA.
Okay, I could have helped you out with that one.
I have cap friendly open here. I was actually trying to figure that out.
Was it Nick Paul?
Recording. What's that?
I feel like Nick Paul would have been a good guy.
I think I glossed over him a little bit and kind of mentioned him as a possibility, but he ended up going to
Tampa for Mathieu Joseph, who I'd say is right up there with the steals of the trade deadline. He had 10 points in 4 games up until tonight and held off the score sheet, but speed with Mathieu Joseph. But yeah, Chris Tierney, he was a good player the first year he came from San Jose. He was in the Erik Karlsson trade. I think he had 37 assists or something, over 40 points, but he's had some back and knee issues. And I couldn't believe the other day I looked it up. He's 27 years old. He plays the game like, I'm trying to think, like Jamie Allison at the end of his career, where it's like he is struggling to get up and down the ice. Like, the Sens, since the trade deadline, have called up players to play ahead of them right now. It's almost one of those like unwritten, like, okay, thank you for your service. They extended them and everything, but the numbers are still there. I can see why in a small sample size, you'd be like, oh yeah, Chris Tierney, centerman, he's pretty good on faceoff. But for Sens fans, he's been a bit of a whipping boy over the past year right now.
Fair enough. I might have even thrown Nick Holden out there as well, because I think he's under
The
contract
reunion.
for one more year. Yeah, and I remember talking to you guys, and you said he played pretty well for the Senators. And, I mean, as like a veteran defenseman, 6th or 7th defenseman kind of a guy, you could do worse than Nick Holden. I know Ranger fans were a little tough on him toward the end of his tenure, but you guys kind of sold me on him as having a little bit of a resurgence there in Ottawa. So I tossed him out there too.
Nice. Yeah. The thing with him is he's playing with, well, right now he's playing with Zaitsev. Whoever plays with, it's funny. And this is why Hamonic isn't a bad idea on the back end. Who knows what you're going to do with Zaitsev? He's got 2 years left on his contract. That contract, by the way, might be the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm sure Rangers fans won't hate to know it was Lou Lamoriello that signed him to that contract. 7 years at 4.5. He might be the worst defenseman in the NHL. I think he has more icings than completed passes this year. I'm not even exaggerating that number.
That's
but
not good.
Whoever plays with him sucks.
Yeah.
Or in Shabbat's case, he's okay, but he still brings his quality down. He's an anchor out there. And whoever plays with Artem Zub, the other Russian defenseman on Ottawa, is completely elevated their play. So when Holden plays with Zub, all of a sudden he's a better player. And then right now they've moved him with Zaitsev, and now he's a worse player. So it's just a tricky situation right now on the Sens back end. But to your point, like, you can never have enough number 5, 6, 7 defensemen going into a playoff run. You never know how many you're going to use. For example, when Pittsburgh beat Ottawa in that 2017 conference final, I think they used 13 defensemen to win the cup that year. And Letang was hurt for a bunch of it. You need depth on defense. Are you happy with the depth right now? Because from what I saw right now, and obviously it looked like there were a bunch of number 4s on defense. It may as well have been 6 Bobby Orrs and 12 number 99 Wayne Gretzky's out there tonight against Ottawa. But are you happy with the 6 defensemen right now? Even deeper, maybe 7, 8, 9 for the Rangers?
No, I'm loving it. And, one of the deals that they made on deadline day was to bring in Justin Braun in exchange for a 3rd-round pick. And at first, I'm kind of like, Justin Braun, I mean, is he even an upgrade on any of the 6 guys that we have? And what they've been doing with him is kind of rotating their 3rd pairing. They've also got Patrick Nemeth. He's a veteran that they picked up in the offseason. And then they've got Braden Schneider, 20-year-old kid, former 1st-round pick from a couple seasons ago. And he's played well. He has a rookie hiccup every now and then, but for the most part, played very well for the Rangers. Good physical player. But, I got to give some credit to the listeners, because at first I was like, Justin Braun, take it or leave it. But they made the exact same point that you just did, Ross. You can't bank on these 6 defensemen being the 6 defensemen for 4 rounds of the playoffs if the Rangers are fortunate enough to go that far. You need a little bit of depth. You need some other options. Injuries are obviously going to happen, especially in the playoffs. We know how physical and how hard-hitting it can be. So it's good to know that they do now have some options. I mean, they've got some they've got Zach Jones too, and he's obviously a young kid and has played a little bit for the Rangers this season, but he is an experience, and I think people, generally speaking, would probably feel better about Justin Braun stepping into a playoff series than Zach, especially when you can just played 100 career Stanley Cup playoff games.
So he was on that Sharks team, right? He was on the Sharks team that went to the Cup final in 2016, I think.
Yeah, I do remember, talking about that he had been to the Cup finals at least once, and I think it was with that Sharks team that I think lost to the Penguins, if I'm not mistaken, about 6 years ago, give or take. Yeah. So
2016, Murray's first Cup. Sens legend, Matt Murray.
Yeah, so I definitely warmed up to that, and obviously he was out there playing tonight. Patrick Nemeth was the odd man out of the lineup. But then Andrew Copp, I know you asked me about him a minute ago, and
fun player, eh?
Yeah, no, just a heck of an all-around player. The phrase that I keep using to kind of describe him, the dude's a B+ at everything, and I'm starting to realize I might be selling him short. Maybe he's a B+, A- at everything. But he's awesome, man. He can play any 3 of the forward positions, play them effectively. He's really good at winning faceoffs. You can put him out there in the power play. He's a great penalty killer as well. Most nights, if he doesn't lead the Rangers in penalty kill time among forwards, I mean, he's right up there. So he's been great. Seems to have just instant chemistry with Artemi Panarin. And for a long time this season, the Rangers, their second line is always Strome and Panarin, but they've really had a revolving door on the right wing, guys in and out and trying to find the right fit. He has really solidified that second line. It looks like it's going to be the 3 of them going forward. So I could not be happier about that. I remember seeing reports on the deadline day that the Rangers, for sure, it was looking like they were going to get either Raquel or Copp. And I like Raquel. I think he would have been a nice pickup too. He goes to Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
But I could not be happier about the fact that they picked up Andrew Copp. And, on the surface, it looks like he could be a rental, but the Rangers and Strome can't seem to hammer out, a new long-term agreement. So I'm wondering if maybe Strome walks in free agency and the Rangers find a way to get something done with Andrew Copp. It's going to be easier said
RFA
than
though,
done.
right?
What's that?
I think Copp's an RFA still.
UFA. Copp,
Oh,
I'm
is
almost
he?
positive. I have
Yeah,
cap
yeah, it
friendly.
might
Let
be.
me
Yeah,
double
yeah.
check that.
Find out. I want to say he's in the final RFA year. I could be wrong though.
No, yeah, he's an impending UFA, so he's
Okay, fair.
making $3.64 million this season, and certainly
Oh
he's
yeah.
going to get a raise there. But yeah, man, I love the fact that they've kind of got a little bit of a plan B. I mean, I would like to have Strome back, but you can't just have an unlimited number for him.
Yeah.
So if Copp proves to be a little bit of less expensive signing for the Rangers, then that's certainly a road that they could look to go down for sure.
Yeah, that was my bad. This was his final arbitration. So this was an arbitration contract that was given to him for this year as his final restricted free agency. So when you look at Andrew Copp, and I'll take off my Locked On Senators hat, I'll put on my day job hat with CJOB. I work for the radio station that has the Jets rights, so I'm following them closely. And I'm actually working on a freelance project with the Jets. We're doing Road to the NHL features with all these players. So I'm interviewing people around them, and yeah, I started the Copp one, and we didn't get to finish that one, but I got to talk to his head coach at University of Michigan, Red Berenson, legend of the game, Montreal Canadian in the 60s, like peak of that. And he just was so complimentary about Andrew Copp. I couldn't believe it. And he wasn't even putting it on for the camera because he was chirping Kyle Connor a little bit early on, but that's a story for another day. But with Andrew Copp, you say he's a B+ and everything. He was an A+ high school football quarterback, set state records in Michigan. So this guy is just a complete athlete when it comes down to it. And you mentioned Strome might be gone. Copp's a natural center. You said he's playing on the wing right now. You can get him in the middle of the ice for years to come. I think that's one of those deals. And what was the condition on those picks? I think one of them they have to go far in the playoffs. Is another one if he re-signs?
So it's 2 second-round picks.
Yeah.
And also Morgan Barron was part of the trade as well. And
going back to Winnipeg.
Going back to Winnipeg.
Did you like him as a prospect? I feel like they like him here. They think he can play like third, fourth line center.
I like Barron for sure, but to me, I don't know that he has as high of a ceiling as some of the other prospects that the Rangers have. I have no doubt that this guy could very easily stick in an NHL lineup, kind of in a bottom six role, plays physical, plays hard. And there were times this season where he was a healthy scratch for guys like Greg McKegg, and I'm thinking like,
oh, damn.
yeah, I'm like, why isn't Morgan Barron playing? But, again, I think limited ceiling, but somebody that I think could certainly stick in the NHL. So, a little bit of a lot to give up. Again, the 2 second-rounders and Barron. And the second rounder, the one of them turns into a first rounder if the Rangers make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I'm totally cool with that because that's a great problem to have because you're getting close at that point.
Yeah. And Copp has to play in half of those games, I think. But you're hoping he does.
Which I'm sure he will, barring an injury, knock on wood. We had Tyler Mott get hurt the other night, so I don't want any more injuries.
And he was playing well, too. He's one of those guys. How funny was it? Connor Bedard, guy's going to go first overall next, not this upcoming draft, but next one. They asked him who his favorite player was in the NHL, and he said Tyler Mott. He's from Vancouver. They just love him there, man.
Dude,
and
that's
you
awesome.
can see why, right?
I feel bad because I mentioned a minute ago, how I did that exercise about picking one player from each team. And I got to the Canucks and I'm looking at their UFAs and I kind of just glossed over Tyler Mott. And then they get him in the trade. And like the outpouring of love from Vancouver Canucks fans was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I'm like, wow, they really like this guy. And I'm telling you, man, like one game and one period into his Ranger tenure there, I immediately saw why. I mean, this guy is like a little bulldog out there. I mean, he plays every shift like it's his last, gives you everything he's got, and is becoming an important part of the Ranger penalty kill and somebody that was going to give them more depth, solidify the bottom six. That was the Rangers' biggest need going into the trade deadline. They needed more depth and more secondary scoring, and he hadn't really done anything, offensively, but I think it was on the way. And just unfortunately, he got taken out on that hit by I don't even remember who it was. Somebody on the Penguins put a borderline dirty hit on him, and then it was on after that. A lot of fireworks down
Let's blame Matt Cook.
It might have been Matt Cook in disguise. You never know, man. Matt Cook, man. Don't even get me started on him. We will be here all night.
Right, me too, man. No, but I love the moves that the Rangers made. Were you surprised they kept Georgiev?
A little bit. I kind of floated the idea of maybe trading him. The weird thing about Georgiev is that if he's getting regular playing time, and I guess it's not really that weird. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. If he's getting regular playing time, he's a pretty solid NHL goalie.
Yeah.
But if he's just playing sporadically, he gets lit up far more often than not. He did have a game against the Carolina Hurricanes not long ago where he stood on his freaking head. 44 save shutout. Rangers won that game 1-0. Just an absolutely outstanding performance by Georgiev. But obviously, you know, the biggest hope among Ranger fans is that Georgiev is a complete non-factor in the playoffs because we don't want anything to happen to Igor Shesterkin. I mean, they're going to go as far as he can take them.
Is Sammy Blais at all likely to come back? Sorry to change it, but like he seems like a playoff type player.
Who's that, Igor?
No, Sammy Blais. Or is he?
Sammy Blais, yeah. So I haven't heard anything all that recently about him, but I will say this: he got injured in November, and the timetable that they gave him at the time, right? Do the math. Yep. The timetable that they gave him at the time was 6 to 8 months. So you do the math.
6 months is May.
May is 6 months. I mean, I'm just saying, never bet against these hockey players, man. I mean, we've seen guys beat their timetable and come back. And there was a video that kind of surfaced on Twitter, probably going back about a month ago. But he was like on the Ranger bench, you know, not during the game, obviously, but he had his hockey stick in his hand and was like shooting pucks toward the net, like from the bench. And everybody's eyebrows kind of go up. I'd love to see him come back, man. I think it would be a great story. You know, he's obviously a tough physical player, and you know, right wing was their biggest area of need, and obviously they addressed that a little bit with some of the moves that they made. But I would imagine Sammy Blais would crack this lineup if he got back healthy. Never say never.
For sure. And I mean, just having depth in the playoffs, you can't have enough of it. And he's a Cup champ, isn't he? Yeah, of course he is.
He won it. He won it with the Blues, and you know, it'd been a long time since the Rangers had a Stanley Cup champion on their roster, and of course they've got Barclay Goodrow now as well. And I was big on that, man. You need some guys with some playoff experience, some guys that have been there and done that. Rangers are obviously a young team. They're going to have a lot of players making their playoff debut this season, and even some of the ones that haven't. You know, the only playoffs that they've gotten was in the bubble a couple of years ago, and they got swept right out of the playoffs by the Hurricanes, and that's not really. I mean, take nothing away from, you know, the teams that did well in the playoffs that year, but you don't really have playoff atmosphere if the fans aren't there and you're playing every single game in the same city. You know what I mean?
No, but that was the first game, right? Or like they were the first series to play, and we hadn't had hockey in like 3 months, and then there was like a big hit, 2 fights right off the bat, wasn't there? Didn't Justin Williams get in a fight?
Strome fought Justin Justin Williams. And what else? I think there was another fight in that game.
Huge hit too. Yeah, I remember just being like, hockey is back. The pandemic's over, and now here we are 12 months later, and it's like kind of maybe over in a way.
It was so weird though, because it like that game was like on a Wednesday afternoon at like 2 p.m. or something like that. Yep. I just remember like all those games were being played at such weird times because there were so many, you know, games to get through, and obviously everybody's got to share the same arena. So
August 1st at 2 p.m. That's hockey day time, man. Come on. That's so funny. I got to ask you this. I know we're probably running a little shorter on time, but who are you hoping to see in the first round? Do you have a preference?
I mean, I try not to be careful what you wish for, right?
Yep.
The team that scares me.
The 8 teams have all clinched, well, more or less since like mid-January. So you got 8 good teams going to the playoffs for sure.
Oh yeah, Rangers officially clinched tonight, by the way, and it's
You're
funny
welcome.
because they could have clinched with a win or an Islander loss. The Islanders were playing a little bit later than the Rangers. I'm like, man, let's just win. I don't want to clinch. I mean, I know they're going to the playoffs no matter what, but let's clinch by something of our own doing here. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, sorry, what was the original question?
A massacre, as we called it on our postcast title. We had a little fun with the Saturday Night Live. We called where is it in New York City? How do you guys say it there? Oh my God. Now I'm just a complete Muppet. What is it? Live from New York. It's a Saturday Night Massacre. That's what the title was.
That's pretty clever, man. Points for that for sure. As far as which team I'd like to see though, I mean, there's part of me, especially after all the nonsense that the Penguins were pulling the other night, you know, in the third period, give me a piece of them. I mean, the Rangers have beaten them 3 out of 4 times anyway, and it's such a great rivalry. And I know, be careful what you wish for, but I would love nothing more than to see the Rangers knock them right out of the playoffs. I think it would be a great series. I think it would be tough. Not going to be a layup by any stretch of the imagination, but the Rangers have the better goalie. They're the more physical team. They're kind of in their heads. I mean, the Penguins have gotten really, really flustered the last 2 times that the Rangers and Penguins have played each other. So by no means do I think it would be easy, but I think the Rangers would outlast that team in a best-of-7 series. And then as
Didn't
far as,
Shesterkin wave them off the ice the other night?
yeah, well, basically what happened was the Rangers scored an empty netter with 37 seconds left. And I wrote down in my notes when that happened, the Penguins started more crap when ... because I knew it was coming. They weren't going to just leave well enough alone. They weren't going to handle the loss with any shred of dignity because that's just who the Penguins are.
Agreed.
And naturally, they're attacking Chris Kreider at the end of the game. Kreider, had a cut on his mouth. He was bleeding a little bit. And then there was a big standoff like at the red line. Everybody just kind of yelling at each other after the game ended. And Igor kind of just, doing one of these. I don't know. He might have been saying, that they're talking a lot, but I think he was waving them off the ice. And that was a beautiful sight right there for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
man. I would love for you guys to kick the crap out of the Penguins. Obviously, the Sens have a tough history with Pittsburgh, the double overtime Game 7 conference final, and you can even go beyond that. They made the only other time this past decade Ottawa made it out of the first round. They beat the wheels off of the Montreal Canadiens in 2013 and then lost in 5 games to the Penguins. 2010, they got swept by the Penguins. 2008, they lost the Penguins. Penguins have beaten them out of the playoffs way too often. So if you guys could do us that one solid, since we did you a solid, let you clinch the playoffs tonight.
There it is.
That would be really nice. And you know what? As a honorary chairman of the board of Rangers supporters, I would love nothing more than to get the Crosby Kleenex back out that we used to see when he was young. He used to whine after every single play. Now we have to have some respect. That golden goal certainly changed my opinion of him a little bit in 2010. But if you guys could please do us that solid, I'd really appreciate it.
I hope so, man. The way the standings line up right now, they would be playing each other. And it's just kind of felt for, going back even, a month, 6 weeks, however far you want to go back, it just feels like those two teams are on a collision course. And I think it's going to be must-see TV. Even if you're not a fan of either team, I think that might be, one of the first-round playoff series to watch for sure.
Oh, yeah. So let's flip the question. Is there a team that you need to avoid?
I would say, even though they haven't really played that well recently, I think the Carolina Hurricanes are going to get it together sooner rather than later. They just play such a sound defensive game. Obviously, Freddie Anderson having, I would say a Vezina candidate-worthy season. I think Igor should be the Vezina winner. But that's one of the few teams that, can almost get close to matching up with the Rangers as far as the goalie position is concerned. So there's that. There's also the fact that the Canes have about 20 former New York Rangers on their team. And the former New York Rangers always tend to do something big whenever they play the Rangers. I don't know what it is.
You think they just start Ranta in goal just to stick it to you instead of Freddie?
Watch them do that, man. And then Ranta pitches a shutout. Kevin Hayes a few games ago, he scored in the shootout to beat us. Freaking Brett Howden is scoring a goal and an assist when we played the Knights earlier this season. That's just the way it goes, man. So that reason alone, I know that's, getting superstitious, but I've seen it too often to want to play a team that has that many former Rangers. So
that's fair, man. That's funny.
Yeah,
and also, Freddie Anderson, we call him Freddie Lalime on our show because Patrick Lalime was always a great goalie in the regular season and just let in untimely goals in the playoffs. And that's what Freddie Anderson did with the Leafs year after year. They'd get to Game 7 and he'd let in 2 or 3 squeakers. So it would be the funniest move ever if they just went. And obviously we're just dreaming. It would never happen. Just Freddie Anderson's having an unbelievable season. And he's a big reason why you probably don't want to play the Carolina Hurricanes in the first round. But if they just were like, hey, former Rangers just dominate when they play against you. All right, Auntie, you're in, buddy.
Well, and on top of that, man, like the Canes, they're just a team that's been knocking on the door the last couple of seasons. They've been close. And I just feel like one of these seasons they might complete their run. So I wouldn't mind with the Rangers missing the Canes in the first round this season.
Fair.
Obviously, they're going to have to play them sooner or later if both teams keep winning. And, the Canes are in first and the Rangers are in second. So seems like they will avoid them in the first round. But yeah, give me the Penguins. Give me maybe the Capitals if the Capitals can pass the Penguins. But like I said, man, it just feels like the Rangers and Penguins are for sure on a collision course.
Who do you think the favorite is in the Eastern Conference then? Carolina? Because for me, man, it's still Tampa. I know they've lost a few recently, but it's a team that you don't want to play a team that's just got back-to-back cups. And they've gotten rest from the right people along the way, right? Like Kucherov missed a bunch of time, Point missed a bunch of time. Like it's not like it's a tired group. They revamped their whole third line. They lost all 3 guys, then they add Hagel, they add Nick Paul. Like They would be the team that I stay away from, especially like, give me 7 games of Shesterkin versus Vasilevsky. That would be unreal.
Yeah, the Lightning, man, it feels like these last couple of seasons here, they're almost just killing time until the playoffs start. Like, I realize they've kind of slipped a little bit in the standings. I think Boston actually jumped them not too long ago. So technically, the Lightning would be one of the wild card teams right now.
They are right now.
Yeah.
Like, if the playoffs started today, but you know what it would mean? It would mean Lightning Panthers in the first round. Oh, my God. We saw it last year. That was unbelievable. And Spencer Knight was the goalie for a lot of that. That was when Bob was still struggling. Obviously, Bobrovsky's back to his former self now. Yep. So it probably wouldn't be the case. But those were like 8-6 games at the time. And I want to say it's 4 straight series clinching games that Vasilevsky has shutouts right now. 4 straight series clinching games, including 2 cup finals where he gets shut out in the final game. Like, that's Hall of Fame shit right there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that sounds about right. And yeah, I mean, the Eastern Conference playoffs are just going to be absolutely nuts this season. I just feel like, there's favorites and everything, but as soon as we think we have everything figured out, Ross, I'm sorry.
No, all good.
As soon as we think we have everything figured out, the Montreal Canadiens end up in the Stanley Cup Finals. Who saw that coming last season? Am I right?
I mean, you know what? Pick your poisons. Either them or the Leafs out of the first round. And to have the Leafs still not be out of the first round since 2004, when Patty Lalime was letting in goals that now he's passed on the namesake. But that is wild. Like, especially as a guy from Ottawa. You absolutely love to see that. They haven't won a playoff series since high definition TV.
There's just so much intrigue. I mean, the Leafs, no matter who they play, like, can this team finally get out of the first round? And then you've got teams like the Bruins and the Penguins that are going to be there, and they're kind of the old guard. And do they have one more run in them? And then you've got a young team like the Rangers. Are they wise beyond their years, and can they make a run at it? Can teams like the Panthers and Canes that have been, kind of knocking on the door, but not getting to the finals yet, can they finally make it happen? So I can't wait, man. I cannot remember a playoff season that I've been looking forward to more than this one. And obviously, the Rangers being in it has something to do with that. But man, is this going to be good? It's just going to be a ton of fun.
Do you think there's any frauds?
Let me, I got my playoff standings board here. Let me just take a quick look at that.
I was about to say the Capitals, and then they just put up a 6th spot tonight and got a big point.
I would say maybe the Capitals. It feels like they're just kind of there because nobody else is there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I don't think they've won a playoff series since they won the Cup, have they? Maybe one?
Ooh. That's a fantastic question. One that I can find out pretty quick. That's because they won the Cup in 2018, and then if we go to Capitals,
West, though, I would say maybe the Edmonton Oilers.
3 straight first round exits for Washington.
Okay, wow, yeah, that's after winning the Cup, right?
Fact.
Yeah. I would say in the West, the Oilers, just because I don't think they have a goalie that can take them very far. It's really that.
Aren't they an entertaining team to watch, though? I always tune in. If the Oilers are on TV, I'm always watching because Draisaitl and McDavid are what they are. They're 2 of the 5 best players in the league in my mind. And their goaltending might be 2 of the worst 5 goalies in the league. And you never know what you're going to get. I mean, it's crazy they haven't addressed that.
Yeah, and there have been chances to do it. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury was available at the trade deadline, and instead he goes to Minnesota and he's taking over for a guy that was in the All-Star game this year in Cam Talbot, former Ranger. So yeah, man, they've had their chances. Free agency this past offseason as well. They could have gotten Fleury then, Fleury was traded, but they could have traded for him.
Yeah. He's got a no move, though. I don't know how many people are lining up to go up to Edmonton. Although it's one of those situations where if you're a market or maybe you're not the most desirable, maybe winters aren't the best. If you have a superstar, people are still going to want to go there.
I would agree. How about you, man? Any frauds? Anybody you're not taking seriously here?
You know what? You're probably going to laugh, but I almost hesitate to say it, but I'm not that scared of Carolina, although I probably should be. Maybe it's just because Ottawa's played them well this year. I think Ottawa's beat them twice already. So maybe it's just a little bias from them not playing their best games during those. But I also saw an arms race by everyone else, right? Like we talk about what New York added at the deadline. Pittsburgh gets Raquel. Florida gets Giroux. Toronto gets Giordano. And Colin Blackwell, another like sneaky playoff type performer there. Boston adds. They get some depth on defense. They also get Hampus Lindholm, a top-end defenseman, right? Tampa gets Nick Paul.
Washington got Sherratt, too.
Oh, yeah. Sherratt went to the Panthers, Florida.
Fleury, yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Fleury. Yeah.
Yeah, so all these teams are loading up, and then Carolina matches it by getting Max Domi. Like that's their big dude. So you know what? I thought they could have done a little more to stay in the race, but they also and the reason why too, they have a great prospect pool. Everyone thinks that they've got a ton of up and comers as well. So I'm surprised they didn't go a little bit further to be like, okay, we've got this solid chance to do well. Why don't we go out there and take it? So I guess they gave up a couple picks there in that offer sheet situation with Kotkaniemi. But you know what? I'm not sold on the Carolina Hurricanes. And clearly it's a hot take. They're tied for second. I guess 3 teams right now have 100 points, but first in their division. And I don't know, man. I think if it's Rangers Hurricanes, I'm taking Rangers in 6 games for sure.
I hope so, man. I hope you're right about that. You know, with the Canes, I think part of it might be too, like Freddie Anderson obviously having a great season. He's been a good goalie through his career, but is he really this good? You know, is he because I'm still big, man, and I know you'll appreciate this as a goalie. I'm still big on, you know, you need to have a good goalie or at least a hot goalie to be a true Stanley Cup contender. When you look at the 4 teams that were left last season, every single one of them had fantastic goalies. You had Varlamov with the Islanders, Vasilevsky with the Lightning. You had Fleury with the Knights, and of course Price carrying the Canadians on his back through the playoffs. Yep. So to me, it's still absolutely huge, and you know, a lot of what the Canes do might fall on Freddie Anderson. You know.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the things. Like the 2 things that I look at whenever I'm handicapping a playoff series is special teams, your power play, and your PK, and your goaltending. Everything else just kind of falls into place from there.
Yeah, I'm huge on special teams as well in the playoffs, and especially the penalty kill. I just get the feeling, I don't know this for sure, but if you look back over the years, I think you'd have to look a really long time to find a team that had a bad penalty kill and won the Stanley Cup. Yep. You have to be able to get out of those situations. It's
100%. Especially, you know what? If you could talk about advanced stats, the 3rd period PK in the playoffs. That's when that's when the pressure's at its absolute peak. You got a good 3rd period PK, or you're going to do some things in the postseason.
Especially on the road, man. The home crowd is rocking. Can you hang in there? Can you keep the puck out of the net?
Man, you know? You're getting me so fired up. We still have 3 weeks till playoffs, but I'm fired
up. I'm so freaking ready to go for some playoff hockey, man. You guys will get there. I know tonight was not a good night for the Senators, but you know, the last matchup, they really impressed me. They've got some young players in place, and you know, I think, you know, of all the teams, I mentioned this to you last time in the Eastern Conference that could make it to the playoffs next season, I would say the Senators and probably the Islanders. You know, the Islanders
the Islanders reload. So they had some extracurriculars. Like Ottawa and the Islanders were kind of the guinea pigs for COVID this year, right? Like they both got in November, missed a bunch of games, played games with like 10 players out of the lineup at one point as well. For Ottawa, it's not the difference. I'm not saying they're a playoff team without that. But with the Islanders, they also started on a 15-game road trip while their barn was getting finished up. Like, that's tough years. And they're also a veteran team
for them.
Yeah, they're a veteran team too, and they've made back-to-back conference finals. Like, it might actually be good for them to get like 1 year, longer summer, recuperate, and come back. They've obviously got fantastic coaching. And when we talk about the Capitals, you said Cup final or the Cup. They haven't won a playoff series since Barry Trotz left. And what did he do? He went and he's won 6 playoff series in that time since he's left. So I like what you're saying about the Islanders. I think the Senators, it's all about their offseason. I said tongue-in-cheek future Senator Claude Giroux, but that's the type of move.
Man, for sure.
That's the type of move. Bring G home. Hashtag bring G home. He needs to come back to Ottawa. He's building a house there.
You, man.
It's one of those, like I said, the Sens aren't a free agent destination. So when we have a hometown guy who's at the towards the end of his career and would be a perfect mentor but can still play, like that level of move is going to be needed for Ottawa to make the playoffs next year.
That's half the battle, man. You got to make your team become a place that people want to go. Like, I feel like the Rangers have done that recently. Obviously, they went into the rebuild, but they signed Panarin, and they said, we're going to kind of build around this guy. We've seen Mika Zibanejad blossom into one of the best two-way centers in the league. Chris Kreider has always been a solid player and has been absolutely just unfreaking real this season.
50 goal scorers next talk.
It's crazy, man, because, you know, for a while there, all of us Ranger fans were like, you know, Chris Kreider, he's actually got a little bit of a shot at a 50-goal season. And now, you know, even coming into tonight's game, we're at the point where it's like, man, it'd be shocking if he doesn't get to 50 goals. And he bags 2 more tonight. Next goal does it. And just crazy. He never had 30 before this season. So
yeah, was he ever a guy that was going to be shipped out? Like, they got rid of so many key pieces from the last run, but he was a guy they decided they had to keep.
That was the $1 million question 2 years ago at the trade deadline, not just for the Rangers, but around the league, because him and I think Taylor Hall, they were the two guys that could be traded at the deadline. They were kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the class. And the Ranger fan base was really divided on that. But I mean, Ranger fans can go back and listen to these episodes. I said the Rangers really need to keep Chris Kreider because I said sooner or later, like I get the rebuild. And, you've shipped away guys like Matt Zuccarello and Dan Girardi. And
Two-time Cup champ Ryan McDonough, exactly.
Yeah, man. I mean, everybody was getting shipped off left and right. But I said, sooner or later, you need a couple of vets in that room. You can't just trade everybody who's over the age of 25. You need a couple of guys there. And I said, I think Kreider, it'll be a reasonable price. And I think he ended up getting about $6.5 million a season. The Rangers had a lot of cap space at the time. So it came down to the 0 hour, man. Trade deadline day, he was either getting dealt or getting extended because they couldn't just let him walk in free agency.
6.5. What's that get you? A 2-bedroom in the meatpacking district?
Something like that. Yeah, that's right around there. Yeah. But no, I thought it was a great move, and obviously it's playing dividends. And one of the leaders on this team, and I mean, what a season, man! Cannot say enough about the job that he's done.
Yeah, I think that's where the Senators, I don't want to say completely went wrong. Yeah, I will say it actually. Mark Stone would have been that guy for the Sens, and they ultimately get rid of him. There's nothing really of note in return. Eric Brandstrom has his moments, but he's also struggled more than he's not. You saw him get rocked, 3 times tonight? Reeves rolled him in. He's a small defenseman that doesn't have the evasive skill that like an Erik Karlsson or Adam Fox have, where they don't get hit often. He gets hammered every game. He's tough as nails, man. He sticks it out, but when you look at the return for Mark Stone, that's the type of player where when you keep him, you just set the tone around everybody else. You keep the continuity in the locker room from those glory years. The Sens didn't keep anyone from 2017. The only guy left from that playoff series we talked about 5 years ago, that playoff series, is Colin White, and he played 2 minutes against Pittsburgh. That was it. Yeah. Nobody else is there. No one.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's just wild. I mean, I understand you have to rebuild.
Unprecedented. It's unprecedented. It's a teardown. Yeah. It's not even a rebuild at that point.
Yeah. And with Kreider, he's the last guy left from the 2014 team that went to the Stanley Cup. And like I said, man, I think you need a couple of veterans, a couple of guys who've been there and done that and just kind of lead the way. I mean, the Rangers, they could name him the captain. They have 6 alternate captains right now, which is kind of wild. But, I'm almost at the point with the season that they're having. I'm fine with them not having a captain. I mean,
he gets the cup first, though. Are we getting ahead of ourselves?
I was actually planning on talking about that on a future episode. Like if the Raiders actually go through 4 rounds of the playoffs and somehow win the Stanley Cup, despite nobody even thinking that they would be a playoff team coming into the season, or most people, I did. I thought they would at least make the playoffs, but nobody was taking them seriously as a cup contender. I think it's got to be Kreider, but I also had this idea that like I could see the entire team just kind of pushing Igor Shesterkin out there because the season he's had, and if they win the cup, he's going to be the guy obviously leading the charge. I could see them kind of pushing him out there. It's fun to think about these things, man. I will say that.
Yeah. I bet it's fun for you. I'm trying to think of like, will the Senators? No, obviously Brady Tkachuk's locked up for 6 years, so he's the captain of the team. They do have that guy, the leader in place, and I'm a huge Brady guy, but it's a long pipe dream. I just want to see a playoff game, man. The CTC, everyone chirps it for the low attendance. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's in a cornfield next to an auto mall. Like it's completely isolated. And it's also way too big. Like you can cram 20,000 people. It's one of the biggest rinks in the NHL. And Ottawa is a population of maybe 1 million. And it's a huge geographical. It's very sprawled out. They've kind of amalgamated because they want the national capital to be 1 million people. But in real terms, Ottawa is probably 500,000 people. And it only gets packed in the playoffs, really. So it's unfortunate. And obviously, Rangers fans know, like they've seen. There's been the 2 playoff series. We're tied at 1 right now because you guys took us in 2012 as well. So I just want to get back to playoffs, man. But the Rangers, like Bob O'Reilly playing right before the game, like you absolutely love that. And man, I'm just fired up to get the playoffs for sure.
Can't wait, man. Definitely looking forward to it. And I figure we can call it there, Ross. We've been talking for quite a while here. It's been a pleasure, though, man.
Dude, always fun to chat with you, man. And if you ever need to get the pom-poms as a guest out, I'm going to be Ranger Ross. So you guys can call me. I'll be like the call-in guy, just absolutely sloshed after a Rangers loss and wanting to fire everybody. I lived out in the East Coast for a few years, so I got a soft spot for Gerard Gallant as well. Good PEI boy. So, you know what? If you ever need a complete fanboy Ranger, that's me coming up in the postseason.
Yeah, man, we'll bring you on after one of these games. Mix it up a little bit, get a view from an impartial party here, such as yourself. And although you're gonna be rooting for the Rangers,
Oh,
since
buddy, I'm not impartial.
yeah.
I've got four figures riding on it in terms of my return based on I told you the odds are wild. So I am very biased. I think the Rangers are the best team. They've got the best player in Artemi Panarin, the best goalie in Igor Shesterkin. They're going to dominate. They're going to run through the playoffs. 4 games, 4 games, 4 games. We'll give the final 5 games. That's it. Rangers win the cup. I think your listeners like me now, though.
In just 17 games, not too shabby. That would be pretty nice. All right, well, yeah,
That's
like I said,
awesome,
Ross,
man.
man, this is a ton of fun. For sure, we will do this again in the future.
Awesome. Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. Talk soon.